Hello, all, and welcome again to another week of 3-Minute Tidbits brought to you by Clemson SnapEd. I am once again your health educator, Samantha Pace, here to talk to you about grains and milk, essentially just another portion control segment talking about how much of whole grains and how much of dairy you need to stay healthy on a daily basis. So, hang tight. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today, before we even get into the portion control, is essentially why grains and dairy are so important. First thing, grains give us fiber and iron. Iron essentially is produced within our bones that allows us to make blood within our body. When we make that blood carries the oxygen, nutrients that we need throughout our body in order for us to do our daily processes. Now, jumping over to the fiber that is also found within our grains, that fiber helps us to keep us fuller longer, as well as to clean out our digestive tract. Now, dairy, on the other hand, dairy has calcium in it, which helps to keep strong bones as well as strong teeth. So, super duper important. All right. So, that's why grains and dairy are super duper important. Fiber, iron, calcium. Three big things. Now, the next thing that we're going to get into is essentially the portions, why we're all here in the first place. Now, those portions for those grains are going to be from 3 to 8 ounces a day. So 3 to 8 ounces a day. And then for the dairy, it's going to be 3 cups per day. All right. So 3 to 8 ounces grains, and then 3 cups per day for the dairy. All right. So for those grains, that can look anything like half a cup of cooked pasta, cooked rice, cooked oatmeal. That could be 1 slice of bread, which equals 1 ounce. So 1 slice of bread, 1 ounce. And then, of course, for your dairy, those 3 cups a day could be anything from an 8 ounce glass of milk, a cup of yogurt, string cheese, cheese on your sandwiches. You've got some options for them both to get them in on a daily basis to help you stay nice, healthy, and strong. So 3 big pointers that I want to tell you is essentially making sure that whole grains are your first ingredient on your ingredients list when you're buying any type of grain product. Second thing is finding some milk alternatives if you cannot necessarily have cow milk. And then, of course, cutting back on your sugar and your fats within your breads as well as your milk, respectively. So, of course, when we're talking about the first ingredient within our grain products, we want to make sure that it's whole grain. All right. Now, if it's whole grain, then that essentially means that you're getting more fiber, you're getting more iron, and that when it's the first ingredient, that's the most item, that's most of any item that they put into that product. All right. So you're getting more fiber, more iron, better for you overall. Now, if you can't have dairy, find some calcium slash dairy alternatives. Okay, so make sure that you're getting in maybe some goat milk, goat cheese, try some soy milk, try some almond milk. If you're drinking coconut milk, watch out because it can have a lot of saturated fat and sugars in it. And then, of course, cutting back on that sugar and those fats. All right, so remember, when you're reading that ingredients list or that nutritional label, if you see that it's pretty high in sugar, so 10% or higher, or has 12 or more grams of sugar, you might want to cut back a little bit, or maybe not eat as much of it on a daily basis. And then with your milk, if it's got a whole lot of fat in it, for example, if it's whole milk, the older you get, the less you need it. So cut back on your whole milk and try low fat, 2%, 1%, skim milk. Maybe try again those alternatives which don't have as much fat in them and tend to be a lot healthier for you overall. All right, so those are some options, 3 big tips. So the last 2 things we're going to talk about today before we end our 3-minute tidbit segment for this week is essentially carbohydrates and gluten. Now, carbohydrates, or carbs as they're more popularly known as, are essentially just the starches and sugars that you find within your foods or within your drinks. They're not necessarily a bad thing. Those sugars are turned into energy within your body. That's what your body uses to get you up and keep you going. So, again, not necessarily a bad thing. Should you watch how many sugars you take on a daily basis? Of course. Just remember that as an individual, for your individual health, you want to definitely talk to your doctor, especially if you're diabetic or have high blood pressure, to essentially talk about your personal dietary needs and how much carbs or how much sugar you should be intaking on a daily basis, or even how much salt, again, for that high blood pressure, that you should be taking in on a daily basis to make sure that you're meeting your personal needs and staying healthy and fit for as long as possible. Now, for that gluten is essentially a protein that's found within grains, okay? Now, this protein can sometimes cause digestive upsets for someone who has a gluten sensitivity or has, say, celiac disease. But for your average everyday person, it's not really going to do anything. So definitely don't be afraid of gluten. Don't be afraid of grains. Don't be afraid of carbohydrates. All of these things are used within your body again for fiber and iron to keep you fuller longer and to help you produce that blood and to keep you healthy overall. So thanks again for joining me for another week for our 3-minute tidbits. This has been your health educator, Samantha Pace, signing off and saying bye.